free. Joining us now is Nathan Reynolds, who we've had on the program a couple of times. Just a fascinating, great individual. Sitting in today for Dr. Tal Brown, who normally joins us at this time every couple of weeks. But we're going to be having a fascinating conversation. And Nathan, welcome back to the Awake Nation. Glad to have you with us.
Great to be here, David and Penny. How
Thank
are you guys?
you. Really good. And you'll be joining us also as a regular contributor. When we start, I have to start rescheduling everybody because we're now going to 5 30-minute sessions as opposed to 4 1-hour sessions.
Excellent.
And that'll be in October.
Looking forward to it. It's going to be spicy.
Looking
forward to you. Now, what do you want to talk about? I want to turn the floor over to you today because you are such a fascinating individual. You're one of those guests, and we just had one on just before you that's like, but sometimes they're not. You're like an epic guest in that you've got a message, and we can just kind of sit back. We'll interject, but we like to sit back and listen to what you have to say. So what is your message today? What do we want to talk about?
I'd also like you, Nathan, to recap who you are for those who haven't seen you before.
Okay, yes. My name is Nathan Reynolds. I'm an author, international speaker, and, just a passionate pursuer of truth. And that truth has led me on a quest of trying to decipher what is happening in the world around me, because I was born into a society of unutterable seduction that tried to lure me away into a doctrine of deceit my entire life. And my family were practitioners of this old religion that really got its power bank from the exploitation of children. And so I was trafficked around as a child. My body was the currency of compromise that was utilized to create blackmail and extortion rackets on people of minor positions of influence, sometimes weightier positions of influence. And it led me onto a path of vengeance and fury. And I began to endeavor to try to dismantle the empire. And the way that I used to believe was most effective to do that was through the end of a knife and was through the end of a strangulation cord. And so I hunted down people that I believed were the bad guys, and generally people that were pedophiles in particular, and people that covered up those crimes. Those were kind of the areas that I just pursued with a relentless fervor. But as my life kind of came to its fruition, as I became a little bit older, I began to see that behind the veil of every other group that I ever got a part of, there was always corruption. There was just this inevitable compromise that I always found in people's closets. And it just disillusioned me to ever finding any real bold warriors for the way of truth. And so I really kind of abandoned a lot of that kingdom for a lot of years of my life and kind of just entered into the fields of psychology and just went about trying to navigate the waters of how do I help people, because I'm tired of just stomping out bad guys. And I realized that didn't get me very far, and it didn't really stop the issues. And I found that information truly was the venue of warfare that I needed to be utilizing more effectively than any other tool. So I've devoted my life to speaking out on topics that others would rather people just shut up and stop talking about. And I make sure to shine a very, very bright, I love flashlights. Can I talk about flashlights for a second, David?
Sure.
I just got to talk about flashlights because this is a simple little thing, right? This is made by a company called Nightcore. I have no endorsements of any kind of people don't pay me money to talk about their stuff. I just find stuff and I think it's fantastic, and I like to share it with people. I'm a cheerleader of the worst kind if you're a bad guy. You know what I mean? This is something that I use to light up the night like nobody's business. Like the other night I was standing here in this room in my studio, and I heard something walking around on this deck, and it was making that skirting noise. You know what I mean? Like footsteps on wood is a very noticeable thing. And I opened the door, and it was total darkness out there, and I had no idea what was going on. Like, I didn't know, was this the moment? Some of you guys think about this stuff all the time, and I totally get it. You're like, this is my moment.
Right.
I turned on this ridiculous floodlight of a flashlight that somebody gave me. You can go to 1 lumen, and you can get way brighter. And then you can do this ridiculous strobe thing that makes you want to puke, right? It's designed to flash at a frequency that makes people want to vomit. It's fantastic. You can get these things for $60, $80. Anyways, Nightcore makes these. And I shined this light out there on the deck, and I saw it was this beautiful little armadillo just scouring around, blind and totally helpless. And he began to try to sniff his way into my house. And I love armadillos so much. I've always wanted to skin them and wear their armor as like a helmet. I'm a little peculiar, y'all. I love crazy, weird stuff like that. Anyways, I finally caught one of these armadillos last year in Texas with my daughter, Naomi. I ambushed him, and we hunted him for months. And I ambushed this creature, and I got to hold him. But I learned they pee and poop on themselves like crazy when you catch them. So
right.
I didn't pick him up. But I learned a valuable lesson there, which is always the two most fundamental things that I'm always most passionate about are basically an edge tool, like a knife, like this neck knife made by MT Knives, Patrick Rorman, fantastic entrepreneur who's providing a wonderful service that adds value to people. This knife and this flashlight can allow me to dismantle and feed my family and basically understand what's going on around me on any day given basis. So today there's two other fundamentals that I want to talk about that are just chomping at the bit for me. And the other basic things that every one of you need to live: bread and water. So today we're going to talk about fundamentals, because if we don't have anything like actually to stand on, we're all going to die. Basically, everyone's starving to death. Yeah. Anybody ever eaten a loaf of bread and wondered why you're still hungry? Or you just felt sick almost instantly, continually, always afterwards? That's because there's a radical, intelligent evil out there that's seeking to destroy your very fiber of your being. And you know where that got started, y'all? We just
Mount Satan.
Mount Satan.
Right.
Fantastic language, right?
Yeah.
This is the heart of darkness that you really got to examine, which is this we're battling these corporatizations of our society. We used to not live in a country like this was established to be a constitutional republic, right? People are like, it's a democracy. No, democracies are not a great place necessarily, because 51% of the people can turn everything into a hellhole real fast. And it doesn't take long to go ahead and swing the votes of corruption in any given direction. So this is how corporations set up and their shareholders, and this allows them to drive agendas in directions that just may not be in the better interest of everybody else around them, which goes back to Edward Bernays and propaganda. If you didn't see that episode, you can go to my YouTube channel and watch it there, that David and Penny and I dismantled a lot of the engineers of our society, the social engineers of our society. But one of those social engineers was basically centered around one thing and one thing only, which was how do we get people to abandon the single most foundational substance of their life, which was whole grains. How do we get people to leave that behind and buy something that's shelf stable and convenient instead? And so the model became, like we talked about, with the corporatization of the human resources of the United States in basic focus, the economic war that was waged by Britain in order to destroy our society. The major player of that was dismantling this single little thing called a wheat berry. I got to grab one for you because maybe none of you have actually seen where bread comes from. And it's really critical. David, have you ever seen where bread comes from?
Other than the supermarket? No.
Dang. Prime example. You guys are setting me up beautifully. Hang in
there. Yes, I thought bread was birthed in a supermarket, didn't you, Penny?
Yes.
Actually, I make homemade. I make homemade.
Do you?
Bread. It's been a while, yeah.
This is where some of my bread comes from, okay? This is from a gal named Becker's. Sue Becker.
Bread Becker.
We're
As opposed to Bread Baker?
Bread Becker. That's her business, by the way. This is Sue Becker.
The Beckers were the bakers. Becker,
come on now. You get them, Penny. You know where this is going.
The Beckers, that's German for when they came over here, they turned into bakers. And the bakers were actually, names are occupational or geographic. So the bakers were actually an occupational name. The Beckers are the bakers, because my grandmother's name was Baker, and in Germany it's Becker.
Ah, see, and who are the millers?
Right,
this is super fundamentals.
The millers are the ones that milled the. It was an occupational name, and they milled the bread.
You got it. They milled the grain. Okay, so this, y'all. This is kamut, which is a type of ancient grain. I love it. It's like literal gold in my hands right now. This is more valuable to me than all the bullets that I ever prepped.
Believe me, I agree with you. That is more valuable than gold.
You know, I found this whole thing, right? Bread, bullets, and Band-Aids, like fundamentals for what you need in your dugout plan. But you know what?
Nathan, bread, bullets, and Band-Aids.
But I didn't even know what are bandages. For thousands of years, what were bandages? They were something called linen, which was a natural fiber that comes from the flax plant. And if you put linen bandages on your body, it accelerates your wound healing. It decreases inflammation by as much as 40%. This is why hospital beds used to be made of linen, because you could wash it in boiling hot water and instantly sterilize it and clean it. And it resisted staining, like from blood and guts and pus and all the bodily fluids that seep out of humans when they're having a bad day. And it used to literally be a way where you could wrap people in linen blankets. I know I'm diverting a little bit, but I assure you, I'm going to seek the dagger like you wouldn't believe. This will bring me to this book written in the 1800s that will totally destroy the empire of evil that's radically consuming us all. My Water Cure. You can get this for like $10 at thriftbooks.com. You don't always have to go to the Amazon Beast system or the Amazon Jungle to get your goods, y'all. Thrift Books change the world. Anyways, Sebastian Knipe was a guy who was back in the 1800s was pioneering a methodology for healing people that were poor. he was like, okay, we can obviously cater towards the wealthy, and we can merchandise humans, which is a lot of people that have a good idea or a nifty understanding of the way that the body works do. They get seduced by the love of money. It's this greediness for gain, y'all, has caused a whole lot of problems in our life. Yeah. And if we can root that out, which is what this guy did, he had this access to information about how he could heal people using plants as medicine, because that's where medicines actually come from, y'all. They don't come from the pharmaceutical shelf. That's where death comes from and blood of human beings comes from. 80%, just real quick, this is just an incredible statistic. 80% of the blood that is donated at the blood bank, you know, the people that are the blood money morticians, the Red Cross and everything else, 80% of that is turned into pharmaceutical products. It's turned into drugs that humans eat. This is how people are eating the blood all the time, y'all, which I talk about a little bit more of that in my testimony. But literally, it's a blood business. 20% is used in the hospitals to, you know, help bad people that are hurting and stuff like that. But the vast majority, it literally is going into the bodies of human beings. So just something to consider when you go to that pharmaceutical aisle, that you might be just, you know, engaging in cannibalism on a regular basis. You should really know what goes into your body. It's very important. This man pioneered a methodology of using cold water. It's called, nowadays we have this language where they call it cold thermogenesis, where you're activating these healing systems that are naturally built into our bodies by the creator through something that we used to call baptism or immersion, where you go underwater. Shockingly incredible at how much it transforms your body. But if you do it in cold water, you don't even have to start there, y'all. You could just walk on wet grass barefoot. Change your life. Just walk on wet grass barefoot. All of what plants do in the mornings when they songbirds start to sing their little songs in the morning, when the sun is 3 degrees below the horizon, songbirds start to sing. And when they do that, it literally tunes the plants to the exact frequency to tell them to open their mouths. They're called stomata. They're like the little pores on the underside of leaves that allow them to transpire, to breathe out, exhale oxygen. Plants breathe in carbon dioxide, like what we exhale, and they breathe out oxygen. And they release moisture vapor, water vapor. That's why you can walk on a field of grass and it's never going to burn your feet. But if you walk on the sand or the asphalt, it's going to burn your feet. It's because plants have this incredible ability to breathe out moist air to cool themselves down through evaporative cooling, just like we do. And so if you walk around on that grass in the early mornings when those songbirds are singing and the dew is on the ground, it literally will allow the pores on the bottom of your feet, which is the highest concentration of anywhere in your body apart from your rectum. It will allow you to start to absorb those micronutrients that are in the leaves.
You're talking about earthing.
This would be a component. This would be a component of earthing. Yes, David. But what I'm actually getting at is trying to make people have balls again. You know, that's a nice abrasive way of saying, like, men need their testosterone back. Okay.
Yes, they do.
We've been chemically castrated since the days of our conception. And so how do we combat this actual methodology? Well, we need ways of invigorating people. We need them to get their piss and vinegar back in them. And literally cold plunging will boost your testosterone by hundreds of percent points instantly. When you jump in there and you got that panic breathing, that big, deep gulp of air, you know, and people are like, oh, and they do all this chicken wing and stuff, or they keep their arms out and they're all panicking and stuff like that. Right. It's totally normal. But when you take in that huge breath of oxygen, your body is unleashing massive quantities of ATP, which is your energy sources. This is like the powerhouse bank in your cells, like the mitochondria, the stuff that the engines of your cells get cranked on. And it tells your body, we need lots of air right now or we're going to die. And so when you breathe in all that air, you take in that big gulp of air, it converts the food energy that you've stored throughout your body and it burns it up rapidly. And the main byproducts of that process is your testosterone, which goes skyrocketing through the roof. And then women, you also need testosterone because it's a precursor for estrogen, meaning if you don't have testosterone because you're eating out of these foods that have been contaminated with like BPAs and various other testosterone blocking endocrine stuff, that it blocks your endocrine system, that damages your endocrine system. If you instead turn back to these ancient ways of living, like actually living authentically, it can literally transform your life. So like a lot of people don't have the conviction maybe in their chutzpah to just jump in a cold body of water or to just turn the shower to cold. I know I can't do it.
I've been reading a lot lately about the concept of taking a cold shower, and it does more than, not only does it do everything you're saying, but it also increases your appreciation for the comforts that we do have and your gratitude when you realize that you're just one step away from not having all the things that we've taken for granted. And it doesn't hurt to do that either.
No, but it does require one thing, and one thing that fundamentally most of us are lacking, which is discipline, David.
That's true. Yeah.
It requires discipline. And I'm not going to sit here and try to say I take cold showers on an ongoing, continual basis. I hate cold showers. I think it's ridiculous. However, I understand the benefit of it. And The only way I can actually get myself to get in the water is to jump in. I literally have to jump in because there's something that happens to every person. And I've traveled all over the country testing humans on this whole thing, right? I go to conferences and I speak at events and I'm all like, come in the water. I go running into these lakes and in these rivers and I'm all like, get in the water, get in the water. And I go in fully clothed, y'all, because I understand that people are like, well, I didn't wear my swimsuit. And I don't know, my makeup's going to run and all these other just vanity. It says, Yahuwah says he sifts the nation with the sieve of vanity. He's sifting for his best treasures. Like this is a super nice crystal that I dug out of the earth in Mount Ida, Arkansas, right? This one is still here. I sifted out a lot of junk rock that was totally worthless and just, it was ordinary. But this one made it to my desk, right? This is like a museum piece for me. Because I hammer drilled this out of the ground super illegally. The guy at the mine came and screamed and kicked me out because I used a hammer drill instead of my hand. But it was worth it. It was totally worth it because that crystal pocket was just gorgeous and it was calling to me and I needed to have it in my pocket immediately. But it requires hard work. It requires discipline. It requires these things that most people have just gotten so soft over. And that's because we're fundamentally tired. People are worn out. They're exhausted. They're miserable. And it literally says in the scriptures, this sword of the covenant that I love to talk about, this ancient historical text that utterly dismantles the kingdom of darkness like nothing else on the face of the earth. From beginning to end, it shows you the schemes and the tactics of our adversaries. It shows you how to dismantle this kingdom of darkness and how to tear down these strongholds that have been built up in our lives and in the systems of evil and constraints that are all around us. Like it literally is showing you guys like, here's the key to unlock the cell and get out. Like it's got the message in there, but you've got to learn how to read. And most people just don't want to read. Most people don't want to actually do the hard thing. And they don't want to get uncomfortable, David. Like you said, they just don't want to be uncomfortable. And that's because we've been softened. Like they killed us with kindness. This is like if you study the people that were the inventors of the social welfare state, their tactic was to kill people with kindness. Right? This is the same ideology that goes all the way back to Sumer, that goes all the way back to Nimrod and Semiramis or Ishtar. People call her Easter, right? This is these goddess that was like, I'm going to win people through their hearts, like Jezebel. You know, they're like, she's like, I'm going to live in a nice white ivory castle and people will think I'm so beautiful and good on the outside. And inwardly, she was devouring and consuming all of the good people out of the land. She was destroying all of people's morality and identity. And she was providing a system of protection through, well, everybody needs me because I pay their bills, right? And it created a bunch of people who were voluntary slaves, people that are like, sure, I mean, it's basically a prison cell. I get my Netflix. I don't care if you tell me I got to lock down and shut up and sit down and stay like a dog. I'll go ahead and do that as long as my packages still show up and my DoorDash shows up on
15-minute cities. That's what's coming. You're going to live in a high-rise apartment with all the stores you need to shop on the ground floor. You never have to leave your house.
And this, I mean, it's just, I'm just hearing Judge Dredd all over. Like,
oh my God,
it's just shaking through my bones.
Yes.
You know what I mean? We got to go through the book of Judges again, y'all. You can't go through the book of Acts until you go through the book of Judges. And we really need some judges to rise up. You know what I'm saying? Like you need some people that have some absolute commitment to the cause, that are not willing to compromise for any reason whatsoever. And the way, but I tried bringing a lot of this information to people and I found out that they stared at me with what I call the fluoride stare, right? I'm not saying it to be derogatory, but a lot of people are on so many heavy metal particulates and so many toxins in their system, their brain has physically shut down. They cannot function and they're basically an automaton. They're like an automaton. They're walking around in such a pharmaceutical haze and such an inflammatory haze, so much mucus and indigestion. They can't poop. Like if you just don't poop for days, man, you're pissed. Like you're going to be grumpy and not going to be able to hear what somebody has to say about the end of the world is tomorrow. They're like, I don't care what the Council on Foreign Relations is doing, man. My guts hurt all the time. And I've got hemorrhoids bursting out all the time. And they're like, help, help. Go to the pharmaceutical aisle. Trust us. If you watched all the 47 commercials that you saw in this hour, you know where to go get your cure. There's a reason for these agendas, y'all. And those reasons are rooted in a desire to control people rather than to give them the tools that they need to make wise decisions. Right. And as long as we stay there, we're going to be slaves of that system, but we can break out with simple changes. That's why, like, I became so passionate about bread. We started something called Becoming a Millenite, okay? Because we started milling our own flour. One of my friends, his name was Eric. He shared with me a video by this woman, Sue Becker, okay? This is her book called Homegrown Flour. Okay. And he shared with me a video that she shared, which is also on my playlist there, Becoming a Millenite, called the Bread of Life. And she talked in this video about this way that they engineered a societal food chain so that it destroyed our health. Okay. She didn't go into any kind of conspiratorial. She didn't layer in the conspiracy piece. She was a nutritionist who was trying to understand what the heck is wrong with everybody back in the 90s. And someone shared with her a book about fresh milled flour. And she's like, well, this totally destroys the whole I'm gluten intolerant, gluten insensitive, and every other version of it. You're all just allergic to death. It's okay. Your body's trying to tell you that what you ate is death. Okay. This is like when you forage. Where's my foraging book? I got this book here about mushrooms. This one. A Field Guide to Mushrooms in the Carolinas. Okay, this is the one that I really used when I first started foraging because Ganoderma lucidum, or red reishi mushroom, was the first super powerful anti-inflammatory mushroom that I ever had in my life that made me not feel like my body was on fire and in pain all the time because I was chronically in pain. I had people call it fibromyalgia. People call it, chronic pain disorder. So like telling me all I got to do is live the rest of my life on painkillers. Right. And I'm like, surely there's got to be a better way. And I started taking food grade diatomaceous earth and bentonite clay and activated charcoal. And I started feeling like a different human. I started drinking spring water and felt like my brain turned back on and was like, what the heck happened? I just thought I was dumb. I literally thought my intelligence had been stripped from me. I thought I'd been hit in the head too many times. And like, I guess I just had a lot of concussions and such. I had no idea that I was just eating death and my body was pissed and was fighting back at me and just putting me in a stupor. But in this book, it's like the whole beginning chapters of this is all about warnings, warnings, warnings. Like, how do you know what you're eating is not going to kill you? Well, your body gives you these things that are like called pre-attack indicators, like something dangerous is happening. So like you can test a mushroom out by first letting it touch your lips, right? Or an unknown edible, a plant that you're like, I don't know what it's going to do. You could just go ahead and rub it on your lips and let it sit there for about 15 minutes. Don't do anything. Do you notice any sensations, like bodily sensations? Like pay attention here. Then if you're still good, you're like, yeah, I'm going to put it in my mouth. You can put all these mushrooms in your mouth. Literally. You can put them in your mouth. As long as you don't chew it and swallow it yet, you just go ahead, touch it to the tongue, check it out for a little bit. Just hang in there.
So the poisonous ones, the ones that you're not supposed to eat, won't kill you unless you actually swallow them.
Basically. Now, I'm going to say that with a little caveat because there's some extreme examples in here that he does give a lot of pages to, like Amanita stuff. There's this whole class of them he's got in here. Like, he's like, hey, these are the death ones. Let me just show you.
The death ones.
It's real important. He's like, you won't be poisoned by a mushroom.
Except.
Here you go. You won't be poisoned by a mushroom you don't eat. That's really important piece of information. You guys won't be poisoned by pharmaceuticals you don't eat.
That's right.
You will not be poisoned by water you don't drink or food you don't eat. No matter how much they say it's safe and effective, genetically engineered death nightmares that are coming in the form of your bread basket are going to cause harm.
Did you see the new video? I'll probably have it in my PowerPoint tomorrow about watermelons that are exploding that you buy at Walmart.
No, I know one of the reasons that you can get watermelons to explode though. You put a bunch of horse poop in your field and you get to boost the nitrogen up way too high. Your watermelons will explode like grenades. It's incredibly fun to do.
These ones are
but I'm not tracking what you're talking about.
These ones are exploding, and then there's like nothing in them. So that they buy them at Walmart, they cut them open and they start fizzing, and then they totally explode. So I'm gonna present that tomorrow. I videoed it. I found it on Twitter.
It's a lot of fermentation.
It's bad. I mean,
well, I can't say particular.
I think there's GMO.
A lot of times it's on one side of it.
That's what killed Gallagher. The comedian, the one that used to hit
the sledgehammer, the watermelon.
The watermelons, yeah.
But I digress. Go ahead.
That's okay. I totally get it. Some of that may just be supply chain issue that you're getting something that's already rotten on the outside, but it's got a really thick husk on the outside, a very thick skin on the outside, so that it doesn't allow you to see and detect that until it just literally blows up in your face. A lot of food can be dead on the inside, like an apple. One of my guys I got to work with down on that farm in 12 Seasons Farm down in Florida, he worked for the huge grocery distributor, kind of like the Walmart out there in the UK. And he was talking about going into the warehouses where their apples were kept under an artificial atmosphere for 2 years before they got to the shelf. For 2 years. Okay. This is not even GMO stuff. I'm not even talking GMO and the way that you can like have these non-brown apples and all the rest of this nightmares. I'm just talking about like basic ways that they're using gas and drugs to keep your apples from going brown. So by the time you're actually eating something, those cells have been dead for years. So what this does to your body, like when you fresh grind grain, check this out. When you fresh mill the flour, the grain, and get your flour out of it, everything in there is alive, right? As long as this grain is sitting here and bugs don't get to it and it doesn't get moist or moldy, this will be here for thousands of years and have just as much nutritional value in it thousands of years from now as it will today. That's very different than a fruit that you pick off a tree. That's very different than that apple, right? Grain is the staple for human society's diet for thousands of years. So they targeted the grain and they started sifting out the bran and the germ, which is your insoluble fibers that are critical for helping you poop and allowing you to expel toxins out of your body. If you can't poop and you can't pee properly or sweat properly, you cannot get toxins out. And so people are walking around fat, sick, and nearly dead because they're overloaded with toxins. Your body encapsulates toxins in a fat cell to hold on to it in a prison chamber, which is wherever your body likes to store it. It holds on to it until you give it the nutritional support it needs to say, okay, let's get rid of that thing. We'll either burn it up or we're going to poop it out or we're going to pee it out. Your body will escort those toxins out of you when you do that. Okay. But if you can take this entire way back by just simply making a single change. You could cook, instead of cooking rice, y'all, you can just cook grain. You could cook barley. You could cook wheat, hard red wheat, hard white wheat. You could cook, kamut or spelt or einkorn, these other ancient grains. You fresh mill this stuff. You can buy a basic electric mill for anywhere from $100 to a couple $100. We love the Nutrimill Classic. It kicks tail of every other version that's out there. It's amazing. We fresh milled our own grain, right? We saw this video. We learned this information. We're like, oh my gosh, I want to eat my bread to satisfaction. I want to sit down and feel satisfied after a meal instead of hungry and grumpy, right? I don't want to have to be taking antacids made of aluminum powder known as Tums. I don't want to keep eating aluminum all the time to make my tummy feel better. Like, I want to be able to eat a meal and then feel the energy from it. And so we sat down and we ate. This gal made a kamut. I believe it was kamut. It was fermented though, so they made a sourdough out of it. And I ate this single slice of this bread, and I had a big glass of raw goat's milk, and I was like a machine out of the blocks charging over this farm and dismantling fencing. I was so energized, and I felt so good, and I was like, what is going on? I feel like electricity's in my bones. And I discovered this entire other paradigm of food that we have been totally veiled from, that's been hidden from us, just so that we would all be so capable of being controlled. Because if people are sick and they're tired, they're worn out and they won't resist. Like, they have no fight in them because they physically have nothing to stand on anymore. And that's literally what it says, the tactic of the dragon, the adversary that prowls around like a lion, roaring lion, seeking whom he can devour, like the father of lies, the murderer from the beginnings, our adversary of adversaries. It says that he literally sought from Yeshua, the master, to sift Peter like wheat. That was his tactic even back then, was to sift out the wheat. And here he is doing it again. And it says that he goes to make war with people, and he's trying to do it by wearing them out. Anyways, it became the biggest transformation in our life, and we realized that people could eat their health. They could eat their way to better health, right? They didn't have to have some major supplemental regime in order to get their way out of this problem that we were in. And they could go get cold water. Like, they could go get cold water. One of my good buddies was having horrible bouts of irritable bowel syndrome. Ugh. He couldn't keep food down. He was having irritable bowel syndrome all the time, and he was literally just continually pooping out everything that he ate. And he was withering away down to his skeleton. And he was so weak and emaciated, he couldn't get nutrients in. So I told him, go into a spring and start dunking in the spring water and drinking spring water. It's the only major change that he made. And he has gained back 20 pounds in 2 weeks doing that. His body is completely been transformed. He changed nothing else. He wears natural fiber because linen is that bandage, right? That's your Band-Aid. You don't need to go buy Band-Aids. You can get a piece of linen and wrap it around your cut and your wounds. It'll make your life so much better. He's using linen because you basically can get your linen wet and then wear it on your body, and toxins will leach out of the largest organ system of your body called your epidermis, your skin, okay? It will leach out of there. It will literally stain your linen. It will stain it different colors. I started having staining on specific areas around my kidneys and my liver on my shirts when I would go plunge in this cold spring and I would get out and go work in the greenhouse. My linen would have staining in specific areas of my bodies. And that's because this is a method that you can use for healing yourself. There's different things. They used to have these healing centers all over the world where people came and did cold water therapy. They would stand knee deep.
They would stand knee deep. They would apply it with copper basins, copper pitchers onto specific areas, like on their knees. If you have arthritic issues, you have tendon damage, you have problems like that, they would pour water directly onto these spots. And the colder the better. But he understands that people are soft. And he's written this book back in the 1800s and said that men are getting soft hands. And he was so concerned about how these machines were making people soft. This was back in the 1800s, right? We got a lot of dainty hands, myself included. I was raised in the society that was like, go to the air conditioning. You'll be free when you get in there, we promise. Not understanding that it was going to kill me. But he talks about some of these other methods, like you can see here. So they would apply cold water to different areas of the body in order to relieve symptoms that were taking place within them. And they look at water as almost like a living actual substance. Like they called it living water in the scriptures, springs of living water. Yeshua said, he who eats of me will never hunger again. He said, I am the bread of life. He who eats of me will never hunger again. He who drinks of me will never thirst again. Out of, like he said to the woman in John chapter 4, he looked at her and said, if you asked of me for water, I would give you water. Oh, that if you drink it, you will never thirst again. That is where we find it. We find it in his word, and we find it in these authentic things. The reason this really took place, y'all, is because we have departed from the ways of righteousness. Like we have been led down a deceitful path. It's called this broad way that leads to destruction, right? There's this narrow path that very few people find. There's this narrow path that very few find, and it says that it's all about this endurance race, that we have to endure to the end in order to truly be saved, to be delivered from all of this bondage. We got to persevere, which means if we're all in an endurance race and we're all in a battle of cosmic importance, meaning we literally are in a war with immortals, beings that have been around for thousands of years longer than any of us. They have the capacity to outthink us, outmaneuver us, outfinance us, outgun us. But we have to believe that there is a deliverance. There is an information, pieces of information that can set us free from that. And one of the predominant issues that took place in our society is that we compromised our convictions. We got led astray to start following the paths of death. We had a country and a nation that had at its heart so many of the original, not just talking about the fathers, the founding fathers, this kind of patriarchal like hero worship that we get brainwashed with. I'm talking about the authentic living human beings who came here to try to live here and establish themselves here. Not just the pilgrims. I'm talking about this territory, this continent that people have been coming to for thousands of years for autonomy. This was a nation and a kingdom where people came to try to be able to live out their lives without the oversight of the ruling classes. It was an island that was so different in comparison to the systems of where they came from. They fled. They were sojourners. They were pilgrims who were fleeing the wrath that was being put on them, the constraints that were being put on their neck, and they were trying to find a way of getting set free from that. They came here because many of them had these biblical convictions to how to raise their family, and they were being persecuted relentlessly for doing that. And so what happened is, over time, as they began to compromise us through our morals and through our convictions and destroy the family unit, they eradicated from us the understanding of basic covenant. We are in a covenant war. We are supposed to have a covenantal relationship with our Creator that makes us ambassadors, representatives of Him on this earth, capable of doing the things that He wants us to do, to be agents of good instead of agents of evil. And what happened is, as that transition took place in the 1800s, this pendulum swung towards this Spiritism movement, towards these seances, towards so much of the opening of the doors, opening of the ancient gates to start allowing these beings to have dominion, to have power, to have glory, to have worship temples erected and exonerated, whereas these secret societies used to be hunted, like the Bavarian Illuminati founded by Adam Weishaupt was eradicated. Even the very Vatican that helped to utilize the methodologies from that systems in the founding of the Jesuits, they themselves had to ban this place. They had to try to block them. The Jesuits got so out of control, they're like, we better shut them down. Countries were banning these secret societies on whole scale. And so they looked for a new Atlantis. This man named Francis Bacon wrote the book, this prophet of Baal put forth this ideology, this magical working called New Atlantis, where they were going to try to create a continent of the land of America. And America, you guys, is the name of the land of the plumed serpent, the feathered serpent. That's the name of this nation and has been for thousands of years. America. It doesn't come from Vespucci and some Italian map maker guy. This place was the land of the plumed serpent. And they came over here to try to resurrect that fiery serpent, that red dragon, and bring about this new Atlantis that was this brave new world, like Aldous Huxley put forth, this identity of a culture where these secret societies became the governing rulers of our nation. And as they underswept through us, we turned to idolatry, we turned to compromise, and they destroyed us. And when you do that, Yahweh curses you. And if you go back to the book of Hosea, this is what got Israel in all kinds of trouble. This is what got the people of Yah in trouble. Because if you claim him as the only king over you, and then you compromise in these areas, he turns around and allows the adversaries to come in and destroy you. The book of Hosea says, he literally warned us, I'm going to destroy your bread and your water and your clothing. Hosea chapter 2. Say to your brothers, O my people, and to your sisters, O compassion one, strive with your mother, strive, for she is not my wife, nor am I her husband. Let her put away her whorings from her face, and her adulteries from between her breasts, lest I strip her naked, and shall set her up as on the day she was born, and shall make her like a wilderness, and shall set her like a dry land, and shall put her to death with thirst. And I shall not have compassion on her children, for they are children of whorings. For their mother has whored. She who conceived them has acted shamelessly. For she said, I go after my lovers, who give me my bread and my water, my wool and my linen, my oil and my drink. Therefore, see, I'm hedging up your way with thorns, and I shall wall her in so that she does not find her paths. And she shall pursue her lovers, but not overtake them. And she shall seek them, but not find them. Then she shall say, let me go and return to my first husband, for then it was better than for now. And she did not acknowledge that I gave her grain, and new wine, and oil, and increased her silver and gold, which they prepared for Baal. Therefore I shall turn back and take my grain in its time, my new wine in its season, and I shall take away my wool and my linen, covering her nakedness. And now I shall uncover her shame before the eyes of her lovers, and no one shall deliver her from my hand. I shall cause all her rejoicing, her festivals, her new moons, and her Sabbaths, even all her appointed times to cease, and lay waste her vines and her fig trees. And she has said, these are my rewards that my lovers have given me. And I shall make them a forest, and beasts of the field shall eat them. And I shall punish her for the days of the Baals to which she burned incense, and adorned herself with her rings and jewelry, and went after her lovers, and forgot me. Therefore, this is where it comes in, the good news, okay? That sucks. That's a really painful word. That's a really painful command, right? He's telling him, he is groaning like a husband who's had an adulterous wife who just kept hooking up with other dudes and wouldn't leave him alone and wouldn't stop. Even though he tried to go get her and bring her back, she still kept going out and being a whore, and he was tired of it. And he said, fine, you want to go get your grain and your oil and your water and your linen and your wool from them? Go get it. But you know what you're going to find? They're going to abandon you, and I'm going to strip you naked. And this is what literally has happened in our country. This is what happened in our society as a whole. We have allowed these social engineers to beguile us into drinking the doctrines of demons, that there is no God, that there is just this science of religion that we can put our faith in, that there is nothing of hope out there for us, that it's just universalism, whatever you want, all roads will lead to whatever it is. It's an absolute falsehood. There are absolute truths, and these truths, we know the founding of this country, they put in there, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights that we have written in that Declaration of Independence, which when I was young in school, they made us memorize, but when I got older in school, they blotted out. That they used to make us memorize that we had a right to overthrow tyranny when we saw it. Right. And instead, they've taken the fight out of us. They've swept our legs, and they have allowed us to become so complacent and so willing to go along with the agenda because we're so tired. But he says in here, he's going to drag it. He will let us come to the wilderness. And so many people, when they hit that hook in the jaw moment, they're dragged into the wilderness without their friends, without their jobs, without their careers, without their comforts and their conveniences, and they're transformed. And this is because they're fulfilling these words that were written thousands of years ago about how we get out of it. He says there, verse 14, therefore, see, I am alluring her, and shall lead her into the wilderness, and shall speak to her heart, and give to her vineyards from there. And the valley of Achor is a door of expectation. And there she shall respond as in the days of her youth, as in the day when she came up from the land of Mitzrayim. And it shall be in that day, declares Yahuwah, that you call me my husband, and no longer call me my Baal. And I shall remove the names of the Baals from her mouth, and they shall no more be remembered by their name. And in that day I shall make a covenant for them with the beasts of the field, with the birds of the heavens, with the creeping creatures of the ground. When bow and sword and battle and I break from the earth, and I shall make them lie down in safety. And I shall take you as a bride unto me forever, and take you as a bride unto me in righteousness and in right ruling and kindness and compassion. And I shall take you as a bride unto me in trustworthiness, and you shall know Yahuwah. And it shall be in that day that I answer, declares Yahuwah, that I answer the heavens, and they answer the earth. And the earth answered the grain, and the new wine, and the oil, and they answer Yisrael. And I shall sow her for myself in the earth, and I shall have compassion on her who had not obtained compassion. And I shall say to those who are not my people, you are my people, while they say, my Elohim. This is the way out of the darkness. Because my family was so persecuted for speaking out against child exploitation rings in Colorado, and because they sent people out after me to try to silence me, to say, keep it quiet, keep it in the family, shut up, stop talking about this, move on. It just lit the fire of conviction in me all the more fiercely, because I knew I was accountable for the information that I had, for the secrets that I'd been experiencing, for the information that got shoved into me from the things I witnessed when I watched these men snuff out the lives of children all over this country. I remember their names, and I said I would never forget them. I would never abandon their testimonies. I will not turn back in the day of my testimony, or in the day when the battle comes to my door. I will not run in fear, but I will stand and fight. And you were made to stand and fight, and to take this information and engage in radical, strategic, devoted destruction to the person you used to be, to the man and the woman who used to be a coward, to the compromise, to the coercion, to the kingdom of corruption. We were made to be warriors in this kingdom, not to go quietly into the night and suffer lives of miserable meaninglessness. We were made to live ferociously, and we got beguiled. We took the line and hook, line, and sinker. But remember, just don't eat the poison. There are thousands of medicinal plants all around you. There's so many people who have not bowed their knees to the system of seduction that we're stuck in. There are many people who are warriors, who are fighting day and night in the shadows. And just because they don't get their voices heard doesn't mean that they're not waging their war. And I invite you, brothers and sisters, to fight for the ways of truth, to leave this kingdom of cowardice behind, and to learn the ways, this ancient path. Literally, he says in Jeremiah 16, stand in the ways. Oh, I got to read it to you, because this sword is so deadly, y'all. I love swords. Can I show you guys another sword of mine? Hold on. Sure. This is my favorite, okay? Like I said, I hunted humans for a long time, and I'll be super transparent. I love doing it with these kinds of tools, okay? And let me just explain that for a second. This is basically the when you read in the scripture, it talks about in Hebrews 4:12, it says, the word of Elohim is living and active, sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing through even to the dividing of the soul and the spirit, and the joints and the marrow, and is the discerner of the thoughts and the intents of the hearts of man. That word there is Machaira. This is a Machaira. You go ahead and look up what the Greeks had, the Greek word Machaira. this is what you'll see. Sometimes they'll call it like a falcata. It has this basic shape. People call it more like a kukri in modern terms, or a bolo machete in the Filipino arts. Like, this is a tool that is basically designed to chop stuff to pieces, okay? This is what I was trained in, because when I was little, I learned to read the Bible. I actually learned to read, and when I wanted to read more than anything else was the stories of the judges. I wanted to read about Samson. I wanted to read about David and Goliath. I wanted to read about Gideon. I wanted to read about people who fought back. Ehud, the left-handed assassin who made a sword a cubit in length. A cubit in length, y'all. The right sword length is from your elbow to your fingertip. It's unique to you. It's called a cubit. That's the right length for you to have your sword, right? If you notice this one, okay, the whole length of it fits about in my cubit, okay? The rest of that length should be your hand size. That's the side for your one-handed swords, okay? Two-handed swords should go from your armpit to your fingertips. Stuff like that. Principles of body mechanics. Anyways, when I was young, I wanted to understand how these people fought their wars. I wanted to understand how Ehud made that dagger and concealed it on his body. And it said because he had an impediment in his right hand. Do you know what that meant? He was deformed. He was deformed. And I grew up in a society where if they spot you with genetic testing in the womb to have a genetic abnormality, or if you might have a precursor indicator for Down syndromes, they murder you in the womb, right? Ehud would have been one of those people that got murdered and cut down because he was deficient in an area with his right hand. But you know what? Yahuwah raised him up, a wounded warrior, a man who was handicapped according to the world and should not be fit for battle. He used that guy to go and sneakily get his way into the king's chamber and stab that king, who is very fat, by the way, full of toxins, because the kings used to eat the white pastries. They used to eat the sifted flour. It says in the book of Proverbs, you're warned to not go after the delicate pastries of the kings. He says, put a knife to your throat if you're a man given to appetite when you sit down to eat with the kings, because they had servants who used to sift out the bran and the germ, and they ate the white, soft, fluffy, powdery deliciousness, and they got fat from doing it. And so you know what Ehud did? He ran that sword all the way through up to the hilt, and it disappeared inside the guy. That story captivated me. And then he ran out of that building and he blew a shofar, y'all. This is a shofar. This comes from a creature that is one of the most marvelous creatures ever in the face of the earth. And you know what he did? He blew a shofar. Same thing that those guys did with Gideon. Same thing that they brought the walls of Jericho, which were full of a bunch of slaughtered dead babies that had been entombed to the walls of Jericho. They brought it down with that tool. And you know what? Ehud's most dangerous weapon was the shofar, because he sounded an alarm. He sounded an alarm, and he let everybody know that the king was dead. Now was the time to strike, because the enemy would be in disarray. The enemy's camp got filled with fear because they had convictions coming out of the camp of Israel from one damaged, wounded, looked over, has been washed out soldier. One man rose up. One man conquered the kingdom of fear because he had courage and convictions to go with the word of Yah and obey the command. And he dismantled that empire. And then he called his brothers in arms with that shofar, and they destroyed their enemies and delivered the people peace. But you know what? I would much rather be a man who is a warrior in a garden than a man who is on fire with fury and rage and surrounded by violence day and night. The only type of violence I want to wage is with these tools and the sword of my lips. And you guys have these tools waiting for you if you will learn to turn back to them. If you learn to go back to these ancient paths. Jeremiah 16:6. Or 16. Sorry, I get fired up about this, y'all. I've been waiting my whole life for people to fight. You know, I'm tired of watching people sit idly by. People saw me. It's not like this human trafficking stuff takes place and people don't notice it. We are surrounded by so many people who are willing to cover up crimes. It's disgusting. It's utterly disgusting, and it's detestable at the very nature of it. In the places where we're supposed to have good, righteous people, I find corruption everywhere. The love of money is the root of so much evil and so much brand protection and so much like, oh, we can't let people know about this. I know he raped your daughter. Like, I've got email inboxes full of people whose daughters were raped by leaders in the ministry, and then the congregation in turn and threatened the family to cover it up, or tried to make the girl marry the abuser to cover it up. Just disgusting stuff. And instead, the moms had to take action and get it to the police and get those pedophiles thrown in prison. Like, I battle with this stuff day and night, and you know what? You guys need to do something to fight back too. And you can do that when you wage your war and you hunt them down and stop this. We're supposed to be fishers for men, but you know what? There's another generation of people that are the hunters, and they're rising up right now, and that's who I'm calling to. Jeremiah 16:16. See, I am sending for many fishermen, declares Yahuwah, and they shall fish them. And after that I shall send for many hunters, and they shall hunt them from every mountain and every hill, and out of the holes of the rocks. For my eyes are on all their ways. They have not hidden from my face, nor has their crookedness been hidden from my eyes. And first I shall repay double for their crookedness and their sin, because they've defiled my land with the dead bodies of their disgusting matters, and have filled my inheritance with their abominations. O Yahuwah, my strength and my stronghold and my refuge in the day of distress, the nations shall come to you from the ends of the earth and say, our fathers have inherited only vanity, falsehood, and futility. There is no value in them. Would a man make mighty ones for himself, which are not mighty ones? Therefore, see, I am causing them to know. This time I cause them to know my hand and my might, and they shall know that my name is Yahuwah. You guys are made to be the hunters who pursue this relentless further, like you're doing right now, David and Penny, where you're turning with every bit of effort that you possibly can to destroy the strongholds of the kingdom of darkness everywhere you find it. And I'm inviting each and every one of you to join us, to resist, having done all these things, to stand firm. Stand firm. Don't give in. Don't give in just because you're tired and weary. Give your body the support it needs. Take care of the internal struggles and strife that are going on. Get your house in order, and then come fight with us, because we need brothers and sisters to wage this war effectively.
Wow. I'm blown away.
You're like totally powerful. And we love you.
Absolutely powerful. Where can people find you?
Oh, Missouri.
Misery?
Misery.
I've been there. I've been there like twice. And
no, I recommend Arkansas so much more. I'll just say that super transparently right now.
Okay.
Northern Arkansas, the Ouachita and the Ozark Plateau.
Everything you guys are saying, it's freaking me out.
The Ozark Plateau is absolutely tremendous, but it's also super infested, which is why I'm here. I'm hunting wolves.
Have you seen Pensmore?
No, I don't even know what that is.
Okay, Pensmore is a castle in the Ozarks in Missouri. Look it up.
Is it outside of Branson?
It's in the Ozarks, yes.
No, it's a big
Jesse
place.
Ventura did a thing on it.
Most peculiar. There's a man who helped to rattle my cage a little bit. The DIA conspiracy and all the rest of that. Anyways, people can reach me at snatchedfromtheflames at protonmail.com. They can go to my website, snatchedfromtheflames.com. I also have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/Nathan Reynolds. I have Spreaker and Spotify and Rumble, all that stuff. That stuff's kind of out there. I'm not exactly the best promotionalist. I don't care to promote myself in any capacity. If anybody wants to have me on a show or anything like that, they can reach out to me, but I'm not going to seek you out or anything like that. Yeah, you can go to those websites. I've got lots of resources. I give away my book. In the description below of these videos, you guys, I got digital downloads of my audiobook, my ebook, and all the audio scriptures. I did an audio recording of the entirety of the scriptures. I understand. You should, if you guys have the resources to contribute to people that are actually waging that war, go for it, y'all. Go for it. Because you know what? The more you give us, the more, like, not just me, I'm talking about the collective group of people who are waging this war. The more you entrust to us, the more you'll see the fruitfulness of what comes from it. Anyways, I hope you live dangerously and eat that living bread, jump in that living water, and wear those natural fiber garments, and bear up the sword, y'all.
Thank you so much. Nathan Reynolds. We'll talk to you again real soon. Thank you so much. Bye-bye now. Nathan Reynolds here on The Awake Nation. Fascinating. Spellbinding. And now if you'll turn to
that's not a good name. That wasn't a good word.
Turn to number 223 in your hymnal. We'll be seeing I mean, he was on fire.
He was on fire. And just, information that is literally regarding survival. And, and our next guest is Dr. Lana Contos, who also talks, she's a naturopath. And so he's basically, telling you the natural way to do things.
And she will too, right after this quick break. Stay right where you are. The Awake Nation continues.